Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming at you with something different. This is campaign primer for my Traveler campaign that's going to be starting at the end of April. So it's about 1 month from now. April 27th is going to be our character creation night, and a lot of Traveler players have a lot of questions about how their referee or their game master is going to run their game, but also if they've never played Traveler before, they have a lot of questions on what the world is all about. Okay, so this video is going to be a primer to the beginning of my campaign, so that when you sign up and get set up as one of our players, which at the time of this recording, we have 3 players, and I would like to have a few more. So we are going to be playing this on Roll20. So if you don't have Roll20, all you have to do is sign up for an account. It's no big deal. And then go to looking for a group, and you should be able to find our campaign. If you have any problems with that, just drop me an email message or a message in Discord or in Roll20, and you should be able to find me. And if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see my name in the game is DM Derek. Okay, so, and the Traveler Adventure should be called The Traveler Adventure. It should also be starting April 27th, 5 p.m. Central Time. Okay, so just some basics. We're going to start making characters on April 27th, and we're going to play every Tuesday night. Because on Thursday night I have a different game. I play D&D, and this gives me a day of prep in between. It also doesn't conflict with any of my other activities or projects. Okay, so if Tuesday is a good day for you, and you're going to be able to make every game session, then definitely hit me up, sign up, drop me a note saying that you want to get into the game, and then I will drop you our Discord so you can get into the Discord. One reason why I need you to be in Discord, 2 reasons. We're going to use voice chat in Discord, but primarily I'm going to be using video, like a video conferencing in Discord. So we're going to have I am going to stream our games on YouTube, where you're probably watching this video, every Tuesday night starting at 5 p.m. Central Time. So that's going to be 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll play for about 4 to 5 hours. And so you could expect to go on till about 10 o'clock Central Time. If that conflicts with any of your activities like school or work or family, then don't sign up. Okay, we don't want people that are not going to be able to play taking up a slot or a spot for someone else that might be able to play. Okay, this video is not scripted. You might have noticed I don't have a script, and I do have quite a bit to share with you guys. I have a ton to share, and it's primarily for the players that are going to be playing in the game. So I will make sure that each of you will get a link to this video to make sure that you're up to speed before character creation. Because I want to answer as many questions ahead of time before the game starts, so that you don't come into the game asking basic questions. Now, different questions, I understand. I can't cover everything. Plus, I don't have a script. Okay, so just so you know, my name is Derek. I've been playing Traveler since the late 70s. Ever since the Little Black Books. When Traveler came out, Star Wars had just come out. So if you remember when Star Wars just came out, that's when Traveler First Edition came out. And those of you that are in the Traveler universe call that the Little Black Books. Okay? LBB. Or you might call that Classic Traveler or Original Traveler, because they didn't call it First Edition because they didn't know there were going to be more than one edition. Okay. And then there's been multiple editions of Traveler after that. There's been Traveler. There's been Mega Traveler, which came out 10 years later. Right? So you had Mega Traveler. Then after that, there was Traveler The New Era, which nobody likes to talk about. And then there is T4, right? Which was Mark Miller's Traveler. Well, in my eyes, all the Travelers are Mark Miller's Traveler because he's the original designer of Traveler. But some of the Traveler editions, he only signed off on and he didn't actually work on. So like T20, which is like the D20, remember D20 Modern? It was a D&D-esque modern game, and they made a T20 version of that, and they called it Traveler T20. Then there was GURPS Traveler, which was Steve Jackson Games, took all the Traveler rules and turned them into, used the GURPS rules and turned it into Traveler, which it works really well for, but it was just way too GURPSy. If you ever played GURPS, then you know what I'm talking about. And then there was Traveler Hero, which used the hero system. If you remember Champions from the day, Champions evolved into a game system called Hero, and because it was made by a company, Hero Games, and their games were kind of like GURPS in a way, where you could make anything and do anything, and so they had a version of it for Traveler. And then Mongoose got a hold of Traveler, and they made Mongoose Traveler, which is an excellent edition. It's a good throwback to the original Little Black Books. Far Future Enterprises made, and you could probably see those books right there, those colorful books, black with the colors. That was the Little Black Books, but it was repackaged into larger books. Like they would put 2 or 3 books in one. I think those books are really nice as reference because we're not playing First Edition Traveler. Okay, there was also Basic Traveler, which was kind of like your starter set, and then they had Advanced Traveler, which is like these, think of it kind of like the Essentials kit and the basic starter set for D&D. I mean, they're basically just basics, right? And then they had a few campaigns, a few board games, a ton of modules, and there is fan material out there that if I was to have to throw a guess at it, I would say there's probably like 5,000 books, and I'm not exaggerating. There's probably that many books through all the different editions. That whole shelf there is pretty much Traveler. I think that is T4, Mark Miller's Traveler. I think that's... Wait. maybe that's Mega Traveler, I think. I think I've got a T20 book over there. I think I have the New Era book over there somewhere, but I never open it. And then there was Mongoose Mongoose Traveler would be, I don't know where Mongoose Traveler is. Maybe this is Mongoose Traveler here, because some of this down here is Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so I have a lot of Traveler books. And as your referee, I would expect you to know that I know the world inside and out. But that doesn't mean I play it straight out of the book. So as a player, don't come into the game thinking that you know it all. You might know everything that you need to know, but don't assume, because remember, this world is it's a futuristic world. Think 10,000 years in the future, but not Star Trek. And the reason why I say that is because the world is more like Serenity or Firefly, or more like Star Wars, or like it's gritty. I don't know. The Last Starfighter? No, that would be like that. Harlock. It's a little bit like that. Basically, technology was on the uprise up to a certain point. It got to a certain point where, and then there was a decline because there was a massive interstellar war or what have you, and it collapsed. Then it built back up, collapsed, built back up. Kind of like 40K, if you ever play Warhammer 40K, all about the I've lost technology because of war. But this is more, I want to say, civilized in a way, because we're playing in the third Imperium. So the Empire of Man has created a third version of the Imperium with an emperor. And now I'm starting to get into kind of like the history and background of the universe to help answer some of your questions. Think of our galaxy, right? And if the galaxy was a disk, and like a frisbee, let's say it's this, well, I don't know, just, if this is the galaxy, you could take about the size of a quarter, and if the galaxy was this big, the size of a quarter is known space. That is, and that still has tens of thousands of stars in it. Okay, so in that area, in the center of the area, because players play characters from the Empire, so what winds up happening is the Empire is the center of your world, right? And there are all these adjacent cultures that you are aware of because, they're neighbors. But you might or might not know what's on the other side of that neighbor. Not super important. Not for my campaign. You're an Imperial citizen. You're in the Empire, the Third Imperium. The Empire is run by, or ruled over by, an emperor, Emperor Strethen. And Emperor Strethen is, he's more of a figurehead than anything else. But and the reason why that is because of communications and travel. Let me get into that here real quick. there's going to be a lot of crossover, so try to absorb as much as you can. If you need to take notes, take notes. If you need to watch this video 20 times, go right ahead. My YouTube algorithm would love that. But okay, so sorry. The empire is so vast that if something happened on the edge of the empire where maybe a war starts, the emperor will be sitting pretty in his palace for 2 years, maybe a year, 2 years to a year, before he even knows about this war. Because as everyone knows, okay, I might be doing this out of order, but first things first. In Traveler, remember I said it was like Serenity, and it was like maybe a little more gritty. Well, the reason why that is the Mark Miller, the original, his vision of the future was not fiction, was not fictional. He was trying to make it realistic as possible, within the confines of real science. So he didn't want to have magic or BS Star Trek made up science to answer questions. He wanted real answers. So because of that, you're not going to have dragons. Well, that's not true. You could have a dragon, because technically a lizard with wings is not totally unusual. Having it breathe fire, maybe. It depends on how I can figure out how to science that into it, right? Let's science the hell out of it. Well, you will have laser rifles, and you will have, but you're not going to have a lightsaber. Lightsaber is fantasy, right? That's not going to happen. There's not going to be fireballs being cast or anything like that. No beams coming out of your hands. It's not this kind of game. So, when it comes to space travel, you have what's called a jump drive, and the jump drive will create a jump field around the ship and then transport it out of dimension, right? This is one of the 3 things. I think there's a total of 3 things, but this is the one thing, or one of the 3 things, that is fantasy. He had to do this to make the game feasible, or playable as a space exploration game. You can't explore space without being able to explore space. Okay, so this jump drive, and he limited it to that it can only jump a maximum of 6 parsecs in 1 week. Okay. So with there being 100 parsecs between here and there, it's probably 200 or 300. It could be, I don't even know. You're only going to be able to travel 6 of them in a week. So you're traveling 300 parsecs in a year. I'm just doing quick math in my head. So for you to travel anywhere significant, it will take you a long time. And there's a reference that it's very much like 18th, 17th century galleys or galleons from like the Revolutionary War, where you had to sail and it took you a month to get from England to the US. And then if a war started, you could send a message back to England saying, hey, a war started, and then the king would have to make a decision of what he wanted to do and then send a message back, and it would be forever. Okay. It's the same thing in the empire. I'm getting to a point, actually. It's the same thing in the empire. So the emperor being a year away, and there's no communications that travel faster than the speed of light. And for those of you that know your science, a parsec is approximately 4 light years. If you travel the speed of light, it'll take you 4 years. So even with the slowest jump engine, which is jump 1, it would only take you a week. So instead of sending a radio message, it's faster to carry mail, a messenger, the Pony Express. So the military would have these fast jump vessels for communications, but it would still be jump 6. That's maximum. That's the most you can have. So jump 6, boop, 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 boop. Every time they jump, it's a week. But it's actually longer because you have to refuel and restock your food and oxygen and life support and all that other stuff. So, and then maybe once you jump, you have to fly. Okay, we'll get into that in a minute. But you have to fly into and out of a planetary system. So it'll take longer. But a lot of these military vessels are prepared to make multiple jumps one after another. But the problem with that is, you can never do jump 6 one after another because jump 6 takes 60% of your ship as fuel. So you would never be able to do 2 jump 6 back to back. It's just never going to happen. But let's just say they're making multiple jumps because maybe they jump in, refuel real quick because there's something waiting for them, and they jump, they refuel, they jump, they refuel, they jump, and they go pretty far. They can only go for 1 year to get to the empire. Then the emperor has to make a decision like, should we fight back? Okay. And then he sends a message back to the front, the admirals up front, and he tells them, okay, you guys have permission to attack. Okay. Well, that's not the way it happens. That is ludicrous. And they realize this early on, that is stupid. So what they do is, and this is where the nobility in the game comes from. There are nobles, and nobles control their areas of space. So you have archdukes, which control big, huge areas. They call it a domain. And a domain is usually 4 sectors. Okay, so you get, and that's just a lot of space. And then in each sector, there are 4x4 or 16 subsectors. Okay, I'm breaking them down. In a subsector, which is kind of what most players play in, they play in a subsector usually, you have hexes, and those hexes represent 1 parsec. So you can think to yourself, one of these hexes, if you had a jump 6 vessel, you could go 6 hexes in 1 week. Pretty simple math. Those things are like 8 across by 10 tall, something like that. So you have your subsector. We're going to be playing in the Aramis subsector, just letting you know. The Aramis subsector is in the Spinward Marches sector. The Spinward Marches is right up against the Deneb sector. Deneb, Spinward Marches, and a couple more. I think one of them is Corridor, but a couple more. That is the domain of the Archduke. Okay. It's still far as hell from one side to the other. So the Archduke says, okay, he's actually met the Emperor. And the Emperor said, you have, I knight you, Archduke, you have permission over the domain of Deneb, right? And he's like, yay, I'm the Archduke. Okay. So then he appoints, and most nobility is appointed. Very rarely are you born into it. Usually, and it's not an election. It's not an election by the people of the planet or the sector or the subsector. It's an appointment. So the emperor appoints the archduke. The archduke appoints the duke, and the duke usually runs the sector, the Spinward Marches. And then he would appoint a count or a viscount, I think, if my memory serves me properly, of the subsector. And then each planet would have something like a baron. So you would have Baron Ferry, Ferry being a planet, and the baron of that planet is the Baron Ferry. I know it sounds flippy, but it's, Elfo. No, it sounds strange. Now, this baron might appoint knights that manage cities or districts, or however that baron wants to break it down. Every baron is different. Okay, so now this is the imperial government. Now there's a second side to that coin. Every planet is independent. Every planet is has their own sovereignty or independence. So I'm going to use Ferry as an example. Let's use Aramis as an example, because that's where the players are going to start. You're going to start on a planet called Aramis, in the Aramis subsector, in the Spinward Marches, in the domain of Deneb, in the Empire. So the Baron Aramis might have rule over imperial affairs on that planet. But the planet itself has its own government and its own way of doing things. And it might or might not be the way the Empire does things. So on every planet, 99%, there is the world government, and then there's the imperial government. And there's usually like a consulate, because the worlds, again, are independent. The Empire wants this to be this way. The Empire wants there to be independence. They are they're libertarians. No, they're very, everybody's free to do what they want to do, as long as it doesn't interfere with the way the Empire works. So, as the biggest example I can think of is nukes, or biological weapons, or something like that. The Empire frowns on these things. You might be on a planet like Aramanx. Aramanx is a planet that, if I remember right, has multiple governments, not just one, just like Earth. You know how Earth has multiple governments? So imagine Earth having all of these governments, and then we have this one or two places that are called Imperial Starports, let's say London is one of them, right? And then let's say Dallas is the second one. Let's just say. So London might have this Imperial Starport, and Dallas might have an Imperial Starport in the city. But the world is the world. The world, just like Earth, commerce and everything else is going on just like it normally would. But if you wanted to deal with the empire, which is outside of your world, you would need to approach probably one of these two starports or the Imperial Consulate, which might be in the UN or something like that. Now, if a war breaks out, let's say there's a war breaking out between Germany and France or something like that, the empire will say, whoa, you guys, do what you got to do. If you got to fight it out to figure it out, then you guys go ahead and do that. We're the empire. We are not your planetary government, so we're not going to interfere. We are hands off. And then Germany nukes France. Then the empire steps in and says, you violated our rules. You cannot use weapons of mass destruction. Because why? And here it is. It's always about the credits. It's always about the imperial credits. You just wiped out a ton of factories and a ton of people that could be paying taxes. So the empire doesn't want mass death, but that's very... It really doesn't have anything about the people. It's about the money, right? It's always, the trail always goes back to the money, right? Okay. So the empire will be pissed off at the Baron, like, why did you allow this to happen? You're supposed to make sure that none of your planetary governments have nukes or whatever. And because this guy had a nuke and he blew up this other thing, we're going to have sanctions on you or whatever. And a lot of times the empire will make a planetary system red. Okay, they'll basically quarantine it and say, man, these people are whack. They're constantly throwing nukes back and forth. If you land on that planet, you might be smuggling or providing them with nukes. And so they will put a restriction on it and blockade it. And you're not allowed to go in and out of a red planet. Not allowed to happen. Now, there is a third-party interest out there, and they're called the Travelers Aid Society. The Travelers Aid Society is a travel agency, but it's members only kind of thing, and they keep tabs on all the worlds and what's good, what's not. They try to keep track. They try to help out brokers and stuff like that, trying to like what kind of market is over there, and are there hostile aliens on that planet? And things like that. And a lot of times they will deem a world, and this is just a third party's opinion, but they will deem a world dangerous, but not to the point where the empire has stepped in and called it a red planet. But let's just say that two factions are fighting over some mineral rights or something, just hypothetically. The Travelers Aid Society might slap an amber zone, like a yellow amber zone, on top of that planet, so that you as a visitor or a traveler, you might be aware that it's dangerous. It's not prohibited, it's just be cautious. And then there's also green travel zones, which is basically every other planet. And so a lot of times you'll notice, and now this is the way Traveler runs in most of my campaigns, 99% of my campaigns. I mean, I've had a mercenary campaign before, I've had a political campaign, I've had an exploration campaign, but those usually don't pan out. Those wind up being like one-shots or very limited campaigns. My best campaigns have always been the traditional Traveler campaign, which is the party, and this is the case, and this is this case. In this campaign, you as a player will have access to a ship right there. It's called the March Harrier. It is a fat trader, which means half of that ship is cargo hold. And what most parties will do is they will land on a planet like Aramis or whatever. They will go to the brokerage house or the the trade house or consulate or wherever they need to go, and it's different on every planet, so you got to kind of figure it out. And once you figure out where you're supposed to go, you'll usually buy some kind of commodity, and it's usually whatever they're exporting. So like, let's say Aramis has a lot of iron. I mean, it's just, they dig it up like it's going out of business and they ship it off because they can make a bank, right? And so you land on this planet and they say, hey, we got all this iron and would love for you to buy it and take it off our hands, right? And so you buy it, you put it in your cargo hold, and then you leave the planet and you fly to another world, parsecs away, and you land, and maybe it's a water world and they need iron to build boats. And now you make a killing because you're buying and selling, you're doing what's called speculative trade. You're buying low and selling high. That's the idea, right? Okay, and that's how you pay your bills. What? Bills? Yes, you have to pay for life support. You have to pay to land at most planets. There's called berthing fees. You have to pay for fuel and ammo if you ever get into like a gunfight. Okay, speaking of gunfights, remember that planet that had multiple governments and they're at war with each other? Who knows? Maybe when you land on that planet, they say Germany has a bunch of wood and they're selling it for cheap. And you're like, okay, cool. Let's go to Germany to get this wood. So you go to Germany and you land at whatever their local spaceports are. Not starport, it's a spaceport, or wherever, airport, if depending on the type of, or maybe you just land in the woods and start chopping wood down with an axe, which you can do. And so let's say you do this, and then, but it's right in the middle of a war zone, right? You didn't even know this. And then all of a sudden these French commandos are storming your ship and shooting all your guys without, and then you have to defend yourself, or maybe you're doing it on the down low, or, you're a little bit, maybe you're stealing the wood or whatever, and you need to pull out your guns and shoot back. Well, that happens more often than not in my games. Okay. So speculative trade is your primary income, but it's not your only income. And I try to kind of tell players that if that's all you do, then we could do that on a spreadsheet, and we don't need to role play. We can just roll dice. I buy low. What do they got? I buy high. Boring. That's not a Traveler game. A Traveler game is looking for adventure, or because imagine yourself being a merchant vessel in a spacefaring, well, first of all, I think that would be exciting. That would be super, super cool. But if you come from that universe, it's not necessarily cool anymore. You get me? So going back and forth from planet to planet, buying and selling cargo would get boring as hell. And you as a adventurer or a player character, a hero in my game, I don't want you to think that that is what you want to do all the time. I understand it's a necessary evil to pay the bills, but there's this damsel in distress. She said that her brother was kidnapped by these subversives, or these anti-establishment guys or whatever, and you say, yeah, let's go help this princess out or whatever, and Princess Leia, and you go rescue her. That's what I want you to do as players. I want you to be not always just taking every job that comes to you, because some of them are going to be bogus, but I want you to at least consider everything, not necessarily with an open mind, but with a eagerness to find adventure. I don't want you to be a bookworm that's constantly locking yourself in your room, that's just reading books and never doing anything. And when you find a derelict ship floating in space and the players all get excited and they get in their spacesuits to jump across to go check out this spaceship, I don't want you to be that guy that says, okay, you guys go, I'm just going to hang out here and beat my meat. No, I want everybody to be excited. But you can be that type of a character if it benefits the team or the party. This is a party-driven game, and if you are disruptive or you're constantly causing problems or trouble with the other players, then I am going to kick you, because that's not the kind of game this is. This is the game that hopefully everyone gets along well with each other. You're all adventure seekers, and now, there can be disputes and arguments over what's the best way to adventure, or what's the best cargo to get, or who wants to be the one to sleep with the princess or whatever. But I don't want you to be, like anti-party or a disruption to the campaign. I don't want that, and I'll have your character kicked out the airlock. Okay, so what did we talk about? We talked about the way jump engines work. There's 3 types of engines. There is the jump drive, which brings you from star to star. But there's also maneuver engines, and there is a power plant. A power plant is still considered an engine, even though it's not technically an engine. It creates energy for the other 2 engines and the rest of the ship. Now, you need a maneuver drive, which is basically, like your big rocket engines in the back, except they're almost always fusion, and they're powered by, actually, most ships are powered by gravity plates, but there's also plasma and fusion, and it depends on the ship, and I could go into that for years. An engine, the maneuver engine, is necessary because the jump drive can fail. There's a failure percentage, and that is based on the type of fuel you have. You can get purified fuel from like Class A and B and Starports, and you can get unrefined fuel from like C and D, and you can also get unrefined fuel from wilderness refueling, and wilderness refueling is landing in or near an ocean and pulling water, H2O, mainly the hydrogen, out of the water, or getting hydrogen out of flying through an atmosphere of a gas giant. Because the fusion power plant in your ship is powered by liquid hydrogen, and which is basically abundant on a lot of planets. You can just land in the water and take the water. And then some ships have the ability to process that into purified fuel, and then you can jump. Purified has the lowest percentage of failure. Unrefined has a medium chance of failure, and then that's one aspect of failure. And then another aspect of failure is your navigator might have plotted an improper course using bad math, and that's where you have skills come into play. Having a higher skill level and a higher die roll will mean you probably won't fail your jump test. Okay. Another thing that, and this is where the maneuver engines come into play, that another aspect of failure is how far away you are from an astronomical body. So if you are on a planet and you press the jump drive, there's a probably close to 99% chance that your ship will just explode. It's too close to an astronomical body. The bigger the body, the bigger the chance. So, like a planet with 1G, some planets have more than 1G, and I'm talking about gravities. With 1G, you have to be 100 diameters away from that 1G generator. So like Earth, because that's what a lot of this is based on, the gravity is based on Earth's gravity. So 1G would be if you're standing on Earth, right? And if you get I'm not sure how wide, let's just say it's 100 billion miles across. I don't really know, but let's just say the planet is 100 billion miles across. Then you have to be 100 times that away, and I'm talking about like Mars distance, before you can press the jump drive. Okay, so basically you have to fly with your thrusters out far enough to make a safe jump. You can do it at 10%, like 10 diameters gives you a huge minus. 100 diameters gives you 0 minus. So it just, how far out? A lot of people will also want to refuel at like gas giants, because you might be jumping into a planet that has no water, or the water is so sparse that there's not enough for you to refuel from any body of water. So like, let's say Dune, right? So there's Dune. You can't just fly in, land on Dune and refuel from the oceans, because there's no oceans. So you would instead stop at the gas giant, fly through the gas giant. Well, first of all, you have to stop 100 diameters away from the gas giant, fly into the gas giant. When I say into the gas giant, refuel by flying through the atmosphere, which is a dangerous prospect, but you could do it. And then once you're refueled, you could decide to either jump out of system after maneuvering 100 diameters away from the gas giant, or at that point, since you're here to sell your wood, you could fly down to the planet. So now you're flying through the system to the planet. Land, do your thing. When you take off, since you've pretty much already refueled, maneuvering in the system takes very little fuel. It's negligible. So you fly out 100 diameters from the planet and then make your jump to the next system or whatever. So you have maneuver drives, you have the power plant, which is powered by fusion, which is usual, and it uses liquid hydrogen as the fuel. You want it to be purified, and you want to be over 100 diameters away. Okay, now we're talking skills. There are a number of crew positions on a ship, usually a pilot, a navigator, an engineer. Those are like the main crew positions, because you have the pilot doesn't make the jumps. He doesn't jump to light speed. No, that's not the pilot. The navigator does that. The navigator puts the course in and plots the distance from the planet and stuff like that. And with the help of the engineer, who's monitoring and managing the power input and output to the jump drive, those two are the ones that make the jump to the next system. But once you're in a system, the pilot is the one that maneuvers the ship from orbit into the planet or up to 100 diameters or flies through the atmosphere of the gas giant. So navigators and engineers are usually more education based, and pilots are more dexterity based. Speaking of that, there are 6 characteristics on your stats, and they're very similar to like Dungeons and Dragons. You have strength, dex, and endurance. It's not constitution. Your strength, dex, and endurance are your hit points. So you don't have levels that you go up and hit points raising every time you level up. That doesn't happen. If somehow you raise your strength by 1, then your hit points just went up by 1. So, with the average person having a 7 in all their stats, and the reason why I say that is because the average Joe Blow on the street rolls 2d6 to determine their stats. So you get anything from a 2 to a 12, with a 7 being average. So the average Joe on the street will have a 7. Some people will have higher, some people have lower. But if you have a 7 strength, a 7 dex, and a 7 endurance, you have what? 21 hit points. That's what a normal person has, 21 hit points. Now I'm just going to keep this straight. If you have a 7, 7, and 7, if I shoot you with a gun, hypothetically, let's say I do 10 points of damage. Well, the first time you're ever hit, it has to come off of endurance. Your endurance would be 0, because 7 minus 10 is 0. 3 points left over. The first time you're hit, that entire amount has to go to one other stat. So it could be strength or dex, the target's choice. So if you are a dex-based character and shooting a gun is dex-based, then you'll want to probably take it off of strength, right? I mean, that's where it goes. But once any one stat is reduced to 0, you will be lightly wounded. And the reason why that's important is for recovering hit points and recovering wounds. When 2 stats are reduced to 0, you're heavily wounded and knocked unconscious. If 3 stats are reduced to 0, you are severely wounded and dead. Okay, now why would you say that guy's severely wounded and dead? That doesn't make sense. I mean, he's dead, right? Well, not exactly, because, you got future medicine can get in there and stop death, you know? So maybe you got shot in the chest, you got this sucking chest wound, you're laying on the ground unconscious, you're bleeding out, you're basically dead, but the medic can run over there, he can hit you up with some kind of stim hypothetical drug or whatever, and he can throw a bandage on your chest, and you're still severely wounded, which means you're not waking up until you go to the hospital, but you're not dead. He basically save versus or death saving throw, basically. Except you don't get death saving throws. You get Traveler's done a little bit differently. Death is more, it's a little bit more unforgiving. Let's say a handgun does 4d6 damage. Okay. That's reasonable. And let's say I roll maximum. What's 4d6? What is that? That's 24 points of damage? Well, that one character only had 21 hit points. So, boom! One shot, you're reduced to 0. Okay. We're playing... It only took me 56 minutes to get into this. If it needs to take me another 30 minutes to explain all this, that's going to be okay. I want you to be able to watch this and learn a little bit about the campaign. And take your time. Like I said, if you have to pause this and come back to it another day, that's fine. But we're going to start talking a little bit about combat. Now, I'm doing this all from memory, so I could be wrong about some of this. And I apologize. It'll be straightened out once you get shot. But whenever you make a skill roll can be anything from flying down to the planet to negotiating for a cheaper price on the wood, or for making sure your jump is proper, the energy output is correct, or maybe you're talking to a passenger. Or maybe you're looking in the ship, because you can have passengers. Maybe you're looking on the ship to see if you can find the stowaway, or whatever. There can be a million different reasons why you roll a skill check. Skill checks are always done with 2 dice. All dice are d6. There are no other dice. So d6, you roll 2d6. Now, if I say... okay, we'll get to that in just a second. You will have a target number, right? And you're going to try to get the highest number possible. Okay, we're shooting for 20s here, okay? So let's say I say, okay, you're trying to pick a lock, you're using your intrusion skill, and you need to get a 10. Now, I don't leave it at that. A lot of times when you roll a skill, there will also be a stat associated with that. And you're familiar with this. If you play D&D, you understand. I mean, 5th edition D&D uses the same rules. You roll your dice. You're looking for a target number. You get to add your proficiency with the skill and your stat bonus. Okay, so your stats give you bonuses. For every 5 points in your stats, you get a +1. So that guy that's got a 7, he's got a +1. You would need to have a 10 to get a +2. But what about that guy with a 12? He's still a +2. You would have to be a 15 to get a +3. Can you get a 15? You can get a 15. Anything over 12 is considered freakish. Like if your intelligence is over 12, you're a genius. If your strength is over 12, you're freakishly strong, like Conan would have been back in the day, or like maybe robots might even have higher than a 15. It's possible. Not players. Okay, so you add your +1 for your intelligence. Well, first of all, that intrusion skill, I would, because the lock is not a padlock, it's not a lock that you're using lockpick tools, it's an electrical keypad lock. I don't say it's intrusion dexterity, I say it's intrusion intelligence, because you have to be smart to figure out the code. Or I might say it's intrusion education, because maybe it's a common lock that everybody knows the code. And so now, if it's like a crowbar action, where you're trying to pick the lock with a crowbar, I might say intrusion strength. So it just depends. So every skill roll, I will tell you the skill and the stat required. Luckily, on these character sheets that we're going to be using in Roll20, it has an option there to click what stat you're using, which is awesome. Okay, now, okay, so that's how you make a skill roll. So I'm going to give you a target number. You're going to roll. You're going to try to beat that target number. Let's say you're shooting at somebody. This is where this next level comes in. Let's say I'm telling you to shoot at somebody, or you're saying you're going to shoot at somebody, and I say, well, he's just standing there, not doing anything. Target number is 5. Okay, I'm just saying it is. And you go, okay, cool. And you roll, and you get a 7, right? Okay. Well, you basically just got an effect of 2. So basically you take the difference of what you needed to what you got. Basically whatever you beat it by is your effect. Effect is added to your damage. Yeah. There is an effect that multiplies damage, but in this case, I think most shooting is just adds to damage. So let's say you need to hit a 5 and you rolled a 10. Well, you got +5 damage. It's pretty good. It's not times 5 damage, hopefully. I'll have to double check the rules, but it might be. But you roll those, you got that handgun, you rolled the 4d6. Let's say you got something average, like a 14, right? Out of 4d6, you're getting a 14 average. Plus 2 more, you got a 16. So you did 16 damage to that guy. Remember, that's 2 stats. 2 stats is 14. The remainder goes on as third stat. He's unconscious. So boom, you knocked him out. Plus he's severely wounded. And at a certain point, he's not severely wounded. He's just heavily wounded. At a certain point, he's going to bleed out and die. So you run over, you bandage him or whatever. But you as a player, imagine yourself in a situation where the guy's got a rifle and he's throwing 7d6 and you are standing around with your 7s and all 3 stats. Now, when you make a character, okay, wait, hold on. Back up. We're talking about effect. Okay, so we got that effect. Now, let's say you are behind him. He doesn't see you. I might give you advantage, right? You're familiar with advantage? Except in Mongoose Traveler, it's not called that. It's called a boon. What that means is, instead of those 2d6, you roll 3d6. But you only keep the best 2. Don't worry about it. Your character sheet has boon, You can toggle it on. It will roll the 3 dice and it will keep the best 2 automatically. That character sheet was well made. So you roll. It's easier for you to get a higher number, which means it's going to be easier for you to get better effect and kill a guy, right? So if you're rolling 7d6 and you're behind him with a boon and you roll, I'm just saying behind him, it could be you're attacking out of the shadows, or it's a surprise attack from a distance, or maybe there's some other reason why you have a boon. Maybe he's tied up. I mean, I don't know. But you have a boon. And so the odds are you're going to get about a 16 on the roll-ish. Plus you have a... Now, let's get real. Let's say you roll surprise. You get like a 16 on the roll. Not a 16. What am I saying? A 10 on the roll. There we go. A 10 on the roll. You only need a 5. And you got a 10. But then you have 2 levels in gun combat skill. So now you've got a 12. Right? 10. No, am I getting my math mixed up? Yeah, I got a 10 on the roll. 2 for the gun combat skill that brings you up to 12. And then you got a dexterity of 10 because you're highly trained commando warrior. You get 2 more. So you just got a 14 on the die roll. And all you needed was a 5. You just did what? 9 bonus damage to this dude. And you rolled 7d6 because you got a rifle. You get the math. You basically blew his head off. And now turn that around. You're the guy getting shot. Boom, you are dead. DED, dead. So combat is kind of unforgiving, but also players aren't supposed to put themselves into combat unless it's super important or desperately needed. Now, there are ways to mitigate that damage. Like there is armor that you could wear. But if, let's say you're in downtown shopping for gemstones, you're probably not in your armor. Or let's say you are, you're at the brothel with the lady in waiting and some pinstriped gangsta thug jumps in and starts shooting at you. Guess what? You're dead. You dead. So it's just, you got to make sure you put yourselves in the right place at the right time and do the right things. But then on the flip side, the players, if they plan ahead, they strategize, they ensure the plan is good, they can get the jump on their opponents, and then they could be the ones that win. They could win. Okay. There's also something called a Bane. Guess what that is? It's the same thing as disadvantage. You roll 3 dice and take the worst 2. Okay. So you have the best 2 and the worst 2. The boon and the bane. Now, why would you have a bane? Maybe you're trying to swim upstream while piranhas are attacking you. I mean, I don't know. Skills. How do you get them? This is important. This is why that first day of character creation is going to be so important. And that day, again, I'm going to remind you, is the 27th of April at 5 p.m. Central Time. If a player signs up for... And this is my hard ass coming out. I'm putting on my drill sergeant hat. If you don't show up for character creation, you're out of the campaign. Because if you can't show up to make your character, the most important day of the campaign, if you can't show up for that day, then how can I expect you to show up on a normal Tuesday for a normal game? I'm pretty serious about it. If you miss a number of games because of school or work or family or emergencies or whatever, if you miss a number of games, you're out. I'll open the slot up for somebody else that I know will be able to make every game. You got to be able to make every game. Now I understand we're going to have certain games that we call off because of holidays or that should be the only reason why we would call off a game. And even then, I don't think we'll have a holiday to call off a game. Name me some holidays that happen on Tuesdays. Okay. So even if that happens, then we'll call off a game. Okay, so during character creation, there's multiple ways you make your characters, right? We're gonna roll dice. We're gonna determine our stats. Everyone is a human. That's just the way it is. There are aliens in the universe. You're not one of them. You're a human. You're from the Empire. You are exploring space. You're exploring. It's kind of on the spinward marches are kind of like the frontier of the Empire. So you're not deep in the Empire. Different planets. Okay, I kind of never even talked about this. There is different technology levels on different planets. Some planets are still in the Stone Age, and some planets have elevated trains. Some planets have anti-gravity movement. Some planets have computers. Some don't. Some still use bullets where others use lasers. It just depends. Okay, so when you make your character, you're gonna make a human. He's going to be 18 years old. He's going to have had an upbringing. He was raised somewhere. That somewhere can be determined by you, and it will give you a certain number of, depending on your choice, it's going to give you some basic skills. Some like, I know how to wipe my ass. I know how to brush my teeth. That kind of stuff. Nothing super important. Okay, and then you're going to get the option to pursue a career. You can be a police officer. You could law enforcement. You could be a smuggler. You could be a pirate. You could join the military, like the Navy or the Marines. You could be an explorer. You could be a merchant. There's a ton of them. You could be a entertainer. You could be pretty much, you pick any career off that I offer. And then you along with the rest of the party, because it's all done simultaneously. And the reason why it's done simultaneously is because you're going to feed off of each other's die rolls. Sometimes, let's say Joe rolls a die and it says, you and one other player do this. And so you have to pick another player. Maybe it's Bill, maybe it's Jim, maybe it's Tad, whatever. And you pick, and they have to agree. So you can't just randomly you get stuck with this. No, you say, hey, do you want to join me on this die roll, right? And once they do, I will tell you what the activity was that happened, and you and your partner have to explain to me with your own words what just happened. So you cooperate in making a story and what that also does, it binds those two players. They have backstory. They know each other from back when you were making characters. Like, man, remember that time that we were in this prison and we both escaped, Right. So you have a little bit of history with players, and all of a sudden, throughout all these different die rolls, there can be cross relationships, because maybe George meets up with Bill to break out of prison, but later Bill and Jim roll some kind of anti-smuggling ring, right? So maybe he's an informant because he got out of prison. Maybe he was able to get in. Or maybe originally he was always a plant and he broke out with the help of this law enforcement agent. I'm just making stuff up. But what I'm trying to say is maybe there's some cross relationships happening. This is like one of the best ways to make characters. I can't express how cool that concept is. But it doesn't happen all the time. It's not a guarantee that you're going to have a relationship with another player. It's not a guarantee that there's going to be any cross relationships. But I need all the players to be there, present and accounted for, to be able to be a part of that character creation process. Okay, so then you choose a career. Let's say you choose Army. And you will spend normally, everything is normally, because there's always some ups and downs and some modifiers throughout the entire process. But normally, you'll spend 4 years of your life in that career. Once everybody's done their first 4 years, everybody will be the same age. They'll all be 22 years old. One player might say, okay, I'm done. I'm done making a character. I don't want to do any more character creation. Okay, so he's out, and we put him in stasis. He's 22 years old. Now the rest of the party continue on. And they roll, maybe a guy wants to stay in the Army, where the law enforcement now wants to become a criminal. Okay, so he switches careers. You can do that. This Army guy stays in, and he builds up his rank and his position in the Army. And eventually, throughout the multiple careers, let's say you get to 4 careers. What is that? 16 plus 18? 34 years old? Okay, so at 34, this guy says, I'm done. We put him in a little bubble and say he's 34 years old. And now he's in his stasis. But the rest of the guys want to keep going, because you need at least 5 terms, 20 years, before you're eligible for retirement. So maybe he wants to retire in the Army. But once you go past 4 years, your body starts to age, and there's chances that your stats start going down. Now, you can stay in as long as you want. I think 9 is the maximum. But yeah, you can stay in as long as you want if you're willing to risk, at the end of the term, your body having a chance to degrade. Every term that you're in one of these careers, you will improve your skills or your stats. So let's say this Army guy, he focuses on completely doing nothing but improving his physical stats, because he wants to be strong, he wants to have high dexterity, high endurance, he wants to be the tank, right? So he's in there focusing heavy on that. And he builds his stats up to like 15. But then he hits age and it drops back down. And that's how that works. Now, as you're going, when you pursue these careers, you're doing a couple of different things. You're aging, for one thing, but you're also improving your wealth, because every term will generate more material for you, but it'll also possibly improve your status, like your rank or just status. If your rank gets high enough, your material items or money starts to go up exponentially. So it's really good to have higher ranking characters, but it's a random die roll, so you might or might not get it. When you're done, and everybody says they're done, one guy was 22 and the next guy was 34, and everybody else is like 99 years old. Now you put them all together as a crew on the ship, and that's what the March Harrier. Your birth date, you'll have to backdate it to figure out what your birthday was, because now that it's 1105, that's the year, you just subtract 22 and you get your birthday, birth year anyway. When you're done generating your stats, rolling your careers, getting your skills, avoiding aging, getting promoted or not promoted, and you get your skills and you're adding your skills up, then we roll to see what kind of materials you get. You get money or you get material benefits. It's called mustering out. You roll a bunch of dice to get things, items or money. Once that's done, then the party gets a list of skills, and I have them generated and I'll post them on the screen during the game. And the party will get to pick and choose what skills they want. And I'll tell you right now, I'm going to make sure that they are all shipboard useful skills, like piloting and navigating and engineering and maybe turret gunner or maybe computer or steward or merchant. It's all going to be March Harrier related skills. So what that means is, remember that army guy that did nothing but build up his stats? He musters out. He's got a sword and he's got 10 credits in his pocket. No skills, but he's got a 15 strength. Why would he be on a ship? What purpose would he have on a starship? Well, you guys can figure this out, but sometimes you need security. Or maybe he's just a guy that can carry boxes. He loads cargo. He's a good cargo loader. And that's why you hire him, right? So you guys all have to kind of figure out your own position on the ship. And sometimes two players want to be the engineer or two players want to be the navigator. And that's good, because what if one of them gets incapacitated? Then the other one can take over. That's good. But let's say, just hypothetically, hear me out. Let's say that everybody wants to be the navigator. Everybody pursues a career that eventually everybody has navigation skill. That's great. Boom, you go into the game, everybody's got navigation skill. Who's going to fly the ship? Well, nobody's got pilot. Wrong. Remember that list of skills that you guys get to choose from? One of you is going to get to choose pilot. You guys have to argue it out amongst yourselves, rock, paper, scissors, or maybe Rochambeau, or whatever you're going to do to figure out who gets the pilot. Whoever it is, just straight up adds pilot to their skill, and we just mark it off the list. Navigator. Well, got too many navigators, not going to need to worry about that one. But we have engineer. Somebody's got to be the engineer. Mark it off, give it to a player. Somebody's got to be a turret gunner. Mark it off. It's that kind of thing. So even if you don't get any useful skills, you'll still have at least one useful skill. And that it's basically going to allow you to fit into the crew or why you were hired to the crew. Okay. So far, so good. I've almost got you guys caught up to once we're done making characters. You will have credits in your hand. You will have skills. You will have met all the other players. You will have spent all night making characters because it takes a long time. Traveler has a reputation for killing characters during character creation. You're sitting there making a character. You're on your 7th term. You've got all the skills in the book. You're about to muster out. You've decided, this is going to be my last term. I'm going to get out and we're going to join. You roll the die, dead. Some careers are more dangerous than others. And so that's your choice to decide. Now, if you decide to be an entertainer, it's probably the most dangerous. And then, no. Mongoose has implemented a system where you're not dead, you're just injured, and then you have to pay the hospital bill to get out of the hospital and not be dead, which I'm okay with that. So that's the method we're going to be using. So you're not just going to instantly die, but there are some careers that the risk is a lot higher than others, Scout. And if you decide to be that career, Scout, then you will run the risk of having a huge debt. If you can't pay the debt with whatever you generate for yourself, not what the other players generate, they can't pay your debt. If you can't pay it, you're dead. Okay. And then what does that mean? You got to make a new character. You got to start over from scratch. Got to reroll stats, got to reroll everything. And what does that mean? Time. Okay, so I anticipate no one dying. But if it happens, it'll take an extra couple hours. So our first few hours should be character creation. It should go pretty smoothly. Then at the end of character creation, you will have credits in your hand. You will be allowed to buy equipment off of a very small list. I'm going to put a list out. You can decide if you want it or not want it. You're not going to have a ton of money anywhere. You're going to have like 10 credits in your pocket, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 credits. And a rifle is going to cost you 5,000 credits. So, you might or might not have enough credits to get what you want, but that's okay. What you want's not going to be on that list. That list is like this is what my character starts with. It's basic equipment. It's like a backpack and rations, and that's it. Okay. But you'll have a ship, the March Harrier. That March Harrier ship is worth like 100 million credits. Don't sell it. I mean, no, don't sell it. There is a debt on the ship. I will explain that. There is a, what do they call it? A mortgage. So you got to pay this mortgage, which basically means every month every jump, you have to pay a certain percentage to the ship to pay off your mortgage. So basically that keeps you motivated to make money. But it's also less than if you purchased a ship with a normal mortgage. It's a subsidized mortgage. Okay. And then and then the adventure will begin. Basically you'll make your characters, you'll buy your stuff, and then you'll muster out and you will be on Aramis. I'll give you just a general, this is where you're at, and that'll be the end of the session. And then the official first game with your characters finished and ready to go will be May 4th, which is Tuesday. May the 4th be with you. Yeah. May 1st is Traveler Day. That is May Day. That is Traveler Day. There was a board game called Mayday that was made in the Traveler universe for boarding actions on ships, and it came with like a map and counters, and it was pretty cool. But for the day it came out, it was really cool. But it stuck as the Traveler holiday. So we're going to try to stick with that. But I didn't want to play it on like whatever day that is, Saturday. We're going to play it on Tuesday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. It just happened to be okay. And if you're interested in my campaign that's coming up, April 27th is character creation, but you'll have to notify me through Roll20 before that so that you can be a part of this campaign. It's a great campaign. I've ran this campaign 4 or 5 times in the past. This is a good point. If you have played this campaign, it is the Traveler Adventure. I don't have it at hand easy. It is the Traveler Adventure. If you have played that adventure before, don't sign up. You'll have too many spoilers. You won't enjoy it. I won't enjoy running a game with you know-it-alls out there. Okay, so thank you, and I will see you soon. Hopefully you'll sign up. We can only take a certain number of players before it starts becoming bogged down, and I'm pretty much doing first come, first serve, and I think we have 3 players. I was looking for maybe 6. All right, I'll see you then.